Today we're going to be talking about the two quarterbacks that were involved in the first blockbuster trade in 2021 in the NFL, Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. Now I know that this is a very unpopular take in that people think that Jared Goff is probably the worst quarterback in the league at this moment. I would like to make the case that he is not, and that the Rams overpaid for Matt Stafford. Now I know this might look a little bit biased considering I'm literally wearing a Jared Goff jersey right now, and that, you know, I've always been a Jared Goff homer. If you guys have watched my previous YouTube videos on my old channel, then you would know that I always stuck up for Goff. Although I tried to be as unbiased as possible, obviously there's always going to be some bias there. And I would like to say that I'm happy that the Rams got Matt Stafford. I just think that people are a little bit delusional on how big of an upgrade they think we got, and they think that we didn't overpay for Matt Stafford when I think we overpaid a bit for him. I'd like to say this: I do think Matt Stafford is an upgrade over Jared Goff, but he's not as big an upgrade as people think. The first part of this video is going to be more analytical and data driven, and then the second part of this video is going to be more from a fundamental, I'm trying to put this into my finance YouTube videos style, but more of a fundamental, you know, why everyone hates Jared Goff and then why they shouldn't. So here, first let's go through the data and just discuss it. So PFF obviously has a different grading system than most people use. They use a ton of different data points that they take from each game, and they come up with a score for how good a quarterback is, how good any player is for that matter. So as you can see here, Matthew Stafford was 14th in the 2020 season. Matt Stafford and Jared Goff both missed a game, so they pretty much have similar, you know, situations last year. Although a lot of people would argue that Jared Goff had the better wide receivers core, and I wouldn't say that we had the better running back core last year, just because Cam Akers didn't really explode until the end of the season. In a few games, around that New England game is when he really exploded. So we didn't have all that great of a running game, and really things couldn't really get going except for the first 5 games. Obviously we played the NFC East, and then the Bills once, but obviously it looked great then. But let's go over this. So Jared Goff was 22nd. You know who else was right in front of Jared Goff was Drew Brees, a fan favorite. So you know, these are a little bit different, but if we look at the whole scope of things, if we look from 2020 to 2017, Matthew Stafford has been very consistent, about 78, 77, 82, 82. So that is something a lot of Rams fans really want in a player, is consistency. And obviously Jared Goff has games like the one against the Dolphins last year where he has like 4 picks, or 4 turnovers, 3 picks, 1 fumble, whatever it was. But Matthew Stafford is very consistent, and he's very good at, or consistent at throwing the deep ball, which is what a lot of Rams fans like. So I really do respect that. But he finished 12th, 17th, 9th, and 14th. So basically a top mid-tier quarterback. If we take a look at Jared Goff over the last 4 years, he has finished 15th, 8th, 20th, and 22nd. Now, these past 2 years are what people are pointing to and saying, hey, Jared Goff has fell off a cliff. He is no longer good, and I can understand that. But I would make the argument that Sean McVay has kind of held back Jared Goff, and obviously won't be holding back Jared Goff going forward. But Jared Goff not throwing the deep ball was almost by design. Obviously, when we take a look at their stats in a second, they're pretty similar. But Jared Goff basically never threw that deep ball. Whether it's Sean McVay designing that because, you know, he didn't want Jared Goff to throw the deep ball because he didn't think he could do it, you know, that remains to be seen. But Jared Goff did used to throw the deep ball back in this 2018 season when he finished as the 8th quarterback. So obviously Jared Goff has shown that he can be good. And over the last 2 years, according to PFF, he is a 20th and 22nd quarterback. But as we can see here, let's take a look at their statistics over the past 4 years. Or let's just go over the last season. So last season, he had 3,952 yards, 20 touchdowns, 13 picks, and a 58 QBR. Obviously, this isn't too good, but Jared Goff has always been able to get us yards and touchdowns. Not only that, he also had 4 touchdowns. This is what a lot of people forget about. He had 4 rushing touchdowns last year, and 100 rushing yards. So really, he he had 24 touchdowns and 4,000 yards last year, and he also did have 4 fumbles, however. So really, he had 24 touchdowns and 17 turnovers. Obviously, that is not great. But we didn't really have a good running game until the end of the year. It wasn't too good. Let's say that. If we can take a look here at Matthew Stafford, I'm not trying to say, by the way, that Jared Goff had a great year last year. He didn't, but he does have the capability to have a great year. We can take a look at Matthew Stafford. He had 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions with a 68 QBR. Middle tier. Jared Goff last year was, I will admit, lower middle tier. Matt Stafford, higher middle tier. They both have their flaws. And if you take a look here at rushing, Matthew Stafford had 0 touchdowns. So really, and I don't know how many fumbles he had. Let's see, fumbles. He didn't have any fumbles. So Matthew Stafford would have just had 26 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Obviously better than Jared Goff, and he did miss a game last year too. So it's pretty comparable. So obviously Matthew Stafford had the better year last year with worse people. I'm not debating that at all. And then let's go over this data, this last piece of data. This is a tweet I tweeted out a couple of weeks ago, and I got some flack for it. But these are the averages over the last 4 years. This is not counting Stafford's last year because he missed a lot of games. So the last 4 full years that Jared Goff and Matt Stafford played, this is very basic, but 4,200 yards per season for Goff, 26 touchdowns per season, while Matt Stafford had 4,100, basically very similar. And then Jared Goff, 12 interceptions per season, Matthew Stafford, 10 interceptions per season, and then passer ratings basically identical. And so I basically put this together because I'm saying over the past 4 years, if we average everything out, they're pretty much the same quarterback. Now, Jared Goff has more turnovers because that doesn't even take into account fumbles. But in terms of passer rating, same. Jared Goff in passing touchdowns and yards, a little bit of an edge. Now, I'm taking an average, and obviously his play has taken a fall over the last 2 seasons, but that doesn't mean he couldn't bounce back. So now that leads us into the last part of this video. The only thing that I want to say is that Jared Goff is not as bad as having to trade 2 first-round picks and a 3rd-round pick in order to get Matt Stafford. Now, obviously, Jared Goff's contract was also another deal where he had a worse contract than Matthew Stafford, but Matthew Stafford also has a good amount of money on the books. So obviously, they wanted the Lions to take this deal to get the sum of Jared Goff's contract off their books, but they really got a lot back in Matthew Stafford's contract, I believe, which is worth $26 million. So I would just like to make the case that Jared Goff is not that bad where we should have had to trade 2 first-round picks, where we're already, in hell with we haven't picked in the first round since I believe 2015. So yeah, I don't think that Jared Goff deserved that, but I think Jared Goff will do well on the Lions, and I think Matthew Stafford will do well on the Rams. Matthew Stafford has a better deep game. Jared Goff has a better completion percentage. The Lions will do well. The Rams will do well. I think it works out for everyone. I don't think the Rams should have overpaid with how many draft picks they gave to the Lions. What do you guys think on this? This is just my thoughts on things. But yeah, comment your comments down below. I'm definitely willing to argue, respectfully. And that's pretty much it. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. And it really helps grow the channel if you guys do that. And I will see you guys in the next video.